House of the Beast is a YA fantasy novel that's expected to come out in August of this year. Yeah, I'm sorry, edgy cartoon people who followed me since my last video. My roots are always going to be books and ancient history. Prepare yourselves to return there every now and again. Anyway, don't believe Goodreads. This is not an adult book. It's young adult dark fantasy. Except it's the kind of young adult dark fantasy you'd get before those terms were hijacked by gooners. It just features a group of people who wear black a lot, no on-page bangery. To the two people who didn't click off this video, let's take a look at the plot. Alma is a lonely little girl in the world of Kugara. She lives with her mother who is poor but kind of hard, and therefore doomed. It isn't long before Alma's mother falls ill. In a last-ditch attempt to save her, she writes to a mysterious address that turns out to be connected to her father. He is a member of the militant House of Avera and a servant of the dreadbeast. His name is Ebony Darkness Dementia. I think he might be named Xander. His name is going to be Alma's dad for our purposes. She agrees to let him take her away from her ailing mother on the condition that he provide a doctor. So Alma is literally selling her soul to the military for healthcare. Something America. As an initiation ritual, Alma gets her arm cut off. All of the members of House Avera are amputees. They each have a metal arm that's being juiced by the dreadbeast. And I gotta say, sick concept. That's fun. In a medically unsound sort of way. So Alma starts her education at House Avera. She meets her mean gay cousin and some other side characters. She learns that House Avera's whole thing, aside from being extremely emo, is fighting monsters. Basically, the houses send pilgrims into the umbral plane, this shadowy mirror world where there's all kinds of beasts. And because Alma's uncle killed the last main beast, the Star, he's the leader of House Avera now, which her dad is pissed about. He doesn't want his brother to have all the glory. So he wants to essentially train Alma up to be his player too and kill the next star that pops up in the shadow realm, getting one over on his brother and his son, Alma's aforementioned mean gay cousin. Did you follow? Okay. Alma is slowly settling into House Avera, but her father is keeping her from visiting her mother. The household is really unwelcoming. She's so lonely that she eventually decides to run away, but the guards catch her, and in trying to defend herself, she gets a sudden surge of power and kills one of the men there on accident with her bare preteen hands. Her father is more embarrassed by this than anything. He yells at her for trying to run away, and in doing that, he lets it slip that there's nowhere for Alma to return to. Her mother has passed away. Of course, this is deeply shocking. Alma only left home to give her mother a chance at survival, but now she died alone in her daughter's absence. Alma blames her dad and herself, which is the introduction of a hilarious running theme, trust me. Anyway, Alma is so pissed she summons God. The dreadbeast himself appears to her in the form of a skinny boy, and we learn that he's actually been watching over Alma this entire time, and doing a terrible job, frankly. My girl was living off of rice and salt. The dreadbeast should have gotten a job. But even so, he's Alma's idealized imaginary friend from when she was a kid. God edition. She remembers she named him Aster, which, let me rant for a second. This is dumb. The naming conventions in this book are dumb. I get that he's named Aster, he's her boy from the stars. Fine, whatever. But why then not name your protagonist something else? One of the cardinal rules in writing is to give your characters names that start with different letters. It's just easier on the brain. A reader will recognize and remember names more easily when they skim over the text, and stuff like variation in length and syllable structure really help with that. So do you know what not to name the two characters that are going to appear together more often than any others? I guess those were the two non-negotiable bases for names: emotional backstory relevance and Horseland? Maybe? We also find out that Aster is the reason that Alma punched that guard. Essentially, he killed him. And that is how the book puts it. Alma doesn't really interrogate that. She sees herself responsible for the death of two people. She calls herself the worst of the worst. Whereupon Aster's like, That's exactly what I need. Ah yes, the worst of the worst. An 11-year-old who didn't even accidentally kill a guy in self-defense, and also her mom died of natural causes. That's her, officer. Hitler Jr. Anyway, Aster's like, I choose you to become the leader of House Avera. I'll help you defeat the star in the umbral plane. And in exchange... You know, I actually forgot what was in this for him. But Alma seems happy. She agrees to be his vessel for power. She's now officially the dreadbeast's chosen, ready to get to work glassing her father's hopes and dreams. So, this is another rare review that makes me not want to spoil the rest of the story. It is a pretty solid read, 3 to 4 stars for me personally. What's up? It's Editing Joy. I'm just chiming in to say that a lot of the things I made fun of in the previous section actually do get resolved. There's not a lot of what I would call plot holes in this book. I was being jokey, but I wouldn't want to mislead you about that. If you get anything out of classic dark fantasy YA, you might like this too. And I mean that. It's well-paced, the prose is comfortable, the world building is really bad, but mostly unobtrusive. Both the promo materials and the actual pages are beautifully illustrated by Wong herself, who has a background in art. She's worked on a Legend of Korra comic before, and she's clearly given it her all this time, even within the limitations of black and white line art. I know, you came here for a rant review. Looks like we'll both have to concede. Wherever shall I take the money to crack an egg into my bulldog this month? Definitely not from the Patreon I set up, because it's not like you care. I'm just kidding. I did get one, but it's just getting started with some outtake stuff and polls. But if you really liked me. Regardless, I am an entertainer at heart, and boy did House of the Beast entertain me. There's plenty of crazy stuff to share without giving the whole game away. So without further ado, my list of funny shit in this bad boy. Number 1, Michelle Wong's woefully hilarious explanation for why they're platonic. So pretty much right after the time skip to their adulthood, it becomes even more clear that Alma and Aster have chemistry, obviously, and Aster's whole thing is that he's fun and a trickster and he flirts with her all the time. And it's also made very clear that the form he takes is very specifically altered after Alma's desires, and he ages with her physically, and he doesn't really behave like an immortal or even an older entity. So how did puberty go with a idealized god who is perpetually your age and also around 24/7? The answer is chaste? Apparently. Of course, the meta reason for this is that the book needs to be containing a developing romance, which means we can't have them getting together at the start. There needs to be something to be friends to loversing towards. So now this poor author is just grasping at straws for why these two aren't fucking, and basically none of it makes any sense. A human folly such as love. Girl, who's talking about love? Who is talking about love? And on that note, based on what are you assuming this anyway? You're pretty confident in his attachment to you otherwise. You know, arguably, friendship with a mortal is a human folly too, but Alma never asks herself whether Aster isn't 100% acting within her best interest, which is naive-ish, but logical, if it weren't so in conflict with her baseless assumption that he can't love. Following the Despot Queen's footsteps. So, the Despot Queen, from what we learn in an earlier exposition dump, smashed a god, and she's not well liked. Hence the name. But it doesn't seem like she was dethroned for sleeping with the god, but for trying to ascend to divinity herself. I would think that that was higher on the list of her crimes. And even if it weren't, Alma, why would you meet the same fate? Who is gonna know? Who is gonna know you're not leaving space for Jesus with your imaginary friend, Alma? Nobody else can see him. Just fuck the ghost. Number 2, the gay cousin's fiance is a DILF hunter. You heard that right. Alma has a cousin in House Avera, the son of the current leader. He also rejects the role assigned to him because where he should be producing heirs with his hot fiance Sevely, he only has eyes for his government-assigned roommate. And Eventually, Sevely catches on to this. She gets tired of his rejection and sets her sights elsewhere, onto Alma's father. Or so Alma tells us. And when I read this, I was like, ooh, this is misdirection. Sevely doesn't want this guy who could literally be her father. She wants Alma, but because they only ever encounter her when they're out training together or whatever, Alma doesn't catch on to that. Save me, Sapphic B-plot, save me. But nah. I guess wrong. Sevely wholeheartedly pines for this distant middle-aged man. Wow, we love to see authentic representation of any Mads Mikkelsen related fandom space. Number 3. Jump scare technology. So one of the reasons why Sevely is into Alma's dad is because he's allegedly open to ideas about modernity beyond the gods. Stuff like radios and televisions, which seem to exist outside of Cougar Town. And I will say this is my least favorite trope. The real world also exists in this somehow, because I have never seen it done without cheapening the original fantasy world. The only exception I can kind of think of is The Cruel Prince, which a lot of this book seems inspired by, but in The Cruel Prince, the modern human world pertains to the plot and to Jude's motivations. We are aware of it from the start. We know that any weapon from there would probably fail against fairy geeses and charms. They can do mind control, and canonically Jude has no desire to go live there or use its tools, so it doesn't disrupt the logic of fairy. Whereas here, it's a revelation that inevitably impacts the stakes, because from now on, if Alma struggles with any problem that could be solved with a Glock, I'm just gonna be a little bit frustrated that one didn't find its way into her hand. But don't worry, I guess. This turns out to not have any relevance at all. This has no justification. Nobody ever travels to the modern world. It doesn't impact anyone we know. It literally just comes up so Sevely can justify her DILF crush, which I feel like could have been something else. Anything else. Make them want each other's Pokemon cards. Number 4, The Wanderer of Still Waters. I've always wanted to say that out loud, because it's impossible. When the time for the Goth-Off comes and all the houses sent their named characters into the Umbral Plane, we finally get to see the star, which for this generation is named the Wanderer of Still Waters. Remember that it's a godlike being with an undetermined corporeal form and immense divine power. And then we get a picture of it and it looks a little bit like a weird sperm, in my professional opinion. But other than that, the plot is very solid. I liked Alma and Aster's dynamic, and I think that the way their relationship is ultimately resolved is a sign of daring on the author's part. It really feels like the book ends the way it was bound to end, rather than the way it feels the nicest. In the same way, I enjoyed the resolution of Alma's father. He eventually acknowledges his own behavior. I think it's an important detail that a lot of abuser character arcs fail to include. The ultimate acknowledgement that a tormentor isn't supernaturally evil or cosmically powerful, but a shitty, lame old person, and you were bigger than them all along by not falling into those patterns of insecurity and passing on their baggage. I liked Alma's eventual relationship with Sevely. Say it with me. The gay cousin's fiance. That is the easiest way for me to describe her in terms of character placement, but she is a shockingly okay arc herself. Old man crush notwithstanding. And refreshingly, this book doesn't seem to feel the need to, like, have a take on femininity. So many coming-of-age stories will have their female protagonists growing into femininity or aggressively rejecting it or whatever. But Alma just sort of exists in the proximity of this obviously very hyper-feminine character, and we don't really dwell on it. Yeah. I'm reiterating to the freaks out there that this book is not really sexual. The romance/romances are tolerable for a romance hater such as myself, and they center around interestingly dysfunctional couples, codependent, unhealthy, or so the blurb tells me. I thought they were all fine. I have a feeling this will come up in therapy.